Hello all, welcome to the answers for the 27th of March, Saturday. I'm going to go through each of the three sheets for today and talk about what formulas and things you need to bear in mind, as well as what the answers actually are. So, first one is Foundation Plus, and just as we were saying before, this is for people aiming at grades 5 and 6. Higher is for 7, and Higher Plus is for 8 and 9, so do the ones that are relevant to you. First one here, we are factorising x squared minus 14x plus 48. This is a standard factorisation, which means we need to add to the middle number and we need to times to the end number. So we want to add to minus 14 and we want to times to positive 48. We want to think about the numbers that do that, so think about what multiplies to 48. That could be 1 and 48, it could be 2 and 24, 3, 16, 4 and 12. And remember, we're trying to get an answer of minus 14 out of all this. The only combo there that looks like it'll get me is 6 and 8 if they were both negative. So the numbers are going to be minus 6 and minus 8, which means the factorisation is x minus 6 and x minus 8. Factorising is one of those things that's crucial for anything higher than grade 5-6. GCSEs love quadratics. Okay. Second question is polygon angle rules. Now there are three polygon angle rules that you should be familiar with. The first one is that the exterior sum is equal to 360. The second one is that the interior sum is equal to sides minus 2 times 180. And the third one is that an interior angle plus an exterior angle equals 180. So every polygon question, you should be thinking about that checklist and going through what might be relevant to you. It says we need to work out the size of an interior angle of a regular decagon, so we need to think how many sides this is. Decagon, decade, that is 10 sides. And which one of these is going to be relevant to us? Now you might think we'd go for interior sum, and that is indeed one way of doing it. My personal favourite way though is to use rule 1 and 3. We know the exterior sum is 360, that's what all the exterior angles add up to. So I can find out what one exterior angle is by doing 360 divided by 10. One exterior angle of this shape is 36, so if you imagine you've got your decagon, we're saying this here is your 36. Your interior angle then adds up to 180 with that, so the interior angle, which is what we're after, is 180, take away 36, which is 144. You could, of course, have done it using rule 2. So with rule 2, we would go interior sum. So we would go 10 take away 2 times 180, which gives you 1440. And then divide that through by 10 to get one of the interior angles, which is 144. So you could use rule 1 and 3, or you could just use rule 2. Either way, 144 is what you should get. Next question is about understanding the general format of a straight line. So the equation that you should have in your head is y equals mx plus c. The m stands for the gradient of the line. The c stands for the intercept of the line, or the y-intercept of the line. Gradient's like the steepness, and intercept is where does it go through the y-axis. Once you know that, and you've got a line that's written out like this, you can read off this information by just looking at the numbers. The gradient of the line is a half, because there's a half in front of the x. The y-intercept of the line is minus 3. Now if you want to write that as a coordinate, which it doesn't want, but just in case it did, it would be 0, minus 3. Our line looks something like this, going through the y-axis at minus 3 and going generally upwards. Lastly, we've got a similar triangles question. So if you have one where you've got a triangle and it's been expanded to make a larger version of the same triangle, you want to try and draw them out separately, because you can get quite bogged down if you try and think about this as one diagram. I've always found it easier to think of this as 2. So my 2 triangles, here's the little one, and here's the slightly bigger one. So this one is A, B, E, and this one is A, C, D. And we'll just fill in the sides that we know. So for A to B, we know that's 12, A to E, we know that's 9, B to E we don't know, that's something we have to find out. A to C, that's 16, because it tells you in the question, and C to D, that's 9. And A to D is like, I guess you'd call it 9 plus X, maybe? Or you might just want to leave it as a little question mark for now. So, with similar triangles, you're trying to find out what have we multiplied a side by to get another side. So, the only ones that these have in common is this one here. How do you get from 12 to 16? Well, if we do a division, we can find out that that is, well, it's 1.3 recurring, but I think it's best to stick as fractions. That is multiplied by 4/3. So to go from left to right, you times the side lengths by 4/3. To go from right to left, you divide by 4/3. Now, that means we can use that to fill in the rest of the sides here. So if I was trying to get this question mark side here, this is 9 times 4/3, because that's what you do when you go into the bigger triangle, and that would be an answer of 12. Whereas if we're going backwards, we want to divide by 4/3. That's going to give us that this side here, BE, is 9 divided by 4/3, which I believe gives us 7.5. So we can now go to the diagram and we can think about filling this all in. That's 7.5. This whole length is 12 from A to D, so that must mean this is 3 left over. It has to be 12 overall. And then we can answer the questions. Length of DE is 3 centimeters, length of BE is 7.5 centimeters. Okay. So that's the foundation plus ones. That's grade 5s and 6s. Let's push on to higher. Again, you should only be doing the ones that are relevant to you. Okay, we start off with a relatively straightforward idea, a box plot. Now the shape of a box plot is this. You have 5 key values. You've got your lowest value at one end, you've got your highest value at the other end, you've got your median in the middle, lower quartile, upper quartile. So let's look at what we've got here. Median is 85. That means I need to draw a line at 85. Lower quartile is 78. That means we need to draw a line at 78. Lowest score is 71. Ooh, hang on. Got to be careful here, haven't I? The scale isn't 1 square equals 1. Because there's like 77.5, isn't it? The scale is at 2 squares equals 1. So there's my 78. My lowest score is 71, so that'll be 2 squares in from 70. That should be here. And then that's some of the information. So we've got the lowest score. We can connect this up. We've got the lower quartile. We've got the median. But then it doesn't tell us the upper quartile and it doesn't tell us the highest score. That's why we've got to use this and this. So the interquartile range is the upper quartile take away the lower quartile. That's the difference between the two. That's what range generally means. So if the lower quartile was 78, then the upper quartile must have been 88 for us to get that answer of 10. So we can fill in the upper quartile line at 88. The range, that's the biggest take away the smallest, or the highest take away the lowest, as I've sort of labelled them here. We know that the lowest is 71. So for the range to be 21, that must have been, we were doing 92 take away 71 to get it. So we can put in the highest value. Again, let's check my scale there. We can put in the highest value at 92. So that's my box plot. Okay, we've got another straight line question, this time a little bit more intense in that we have to find the equation of the line. Now remember back to what we were saying, y is mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. For you to solve this, you need to find the gradient and you need to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is easy because it's just where do we cross the y-axis, so there's our c. The gradient, you want to draw a triangle on the line. And you can draw this any way you like. I'm going to draw it from here to here, why not? But you could draw it anywhere on the shape, it will give you the same answer at the end. And I'm trying to find out what's the change in y, so m is change in y over change in x, or if you're more of a formula friend, it could be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Either of those work. In this case I would use the first one. And remember, you're not counting squares, you're counting distance. So this goes from 2 to minus 4. So this distance is 6. And this goes from 0.5 here to 2. So that's 1.5. So your gradient is going to be change in y, which is 6, divided by change in x, which is 1.5, which is 4. However, you have to be careful here, the line is going downwards. So our gradient is actually negative, so we'd have minus 4. Put that all together, you get the equation of your line is y equals minus 4x, remember that's our gradient m, plus 4, our y-intercept c. We're told that another line is parallel to this and passes through 920. So parallel means that the gradient is the same. So we had a gradient of minus 4 on our line, we're going to have a gradient of minus 4 on this line. The opposite of that would be perpendicular if they were at right angles, and that's a situation where we'd use a negative reciprocal, but we'll get to that when we get to that. It says it goes through a point 920. Now I'm going to label this as a coordinate that's on the line. I'm going to call it my x1, y1. And I'm going to use the advanced equation of a line formula. Y minus y1 is m brackets x minus x1. Okay? And I'm going to substitute in the three things that we mentioned there. So y and x kind of stay the same, but we're going to put into that our y1 was 20, because we labelled it up here. Our x1 is 9, and our gradient is minus 4. Now that is an equation of the line, but normally it's nice to multiply that out and simplify it to be y equals in case you need to do anything else with it. So we'll do that. Y minus 20 is minus 4x plus 36, and then we can add the 20 across to get a final answer of y equals minus 4x add 56. Okay, nearly there. What's the value of n? So this is an indices rule, and if you're talking about 5 to the power of something, that means everything on the other side needs to be 5 to the power of something as well. 125 is 5 cubed, meant to be one of the cube numbers that you recognise. So we could write this down as 1 over 5 cubed. If you have a reciprocal with indices, that means the power is negative. So our answer is 5 to the minus 3. So n must be minus 3. Okay. Lastly, this is a Pythagoras question. A man walks y miles north and y walks 8 miles west, so that is going to be north and then west. So let's draw out what that looks like. Man starts here, man goes up y miles, man goes across y plus 8, absolutely not drawn to scale. He is now 12 miles from the starting point, so this whole distance must be 12. What have we got here? We've got a right-angled triangle. What can we do with right-angled triangles? We can use Pythagoras. So, side squared plus side squared equals hypotenuse squared. That isn't what they've got above there, so clearly we're going to have to expand and simplify and do things with this, but That's the general idea. Remember, if you're expanding y plus 8 all squared, let's do that over here, you need to remember that is a bracket times a bracket. So we get y squared plus 8y plus 8y plus 64. Y squared plus 16y plus 64. Okay? Now, we can put that back into the equation. We can say we have got y squared plus 16y plus 64, which is what we just expanded. And then 12 squared is 144. We can simplify this. We have got 2 y squareds there. And we can subtract the 144 across, because clearly this has a 0 on one side. We want to do that as well. You're always trying to match what the question says. So take away that, we'll get 80 left over. Is that what we want? No, this looks like about half that, doesn't it? So we could halve it. Y squared plus 8y minus 40 equals 0. Job done. Notice you don't need to solve it. You don't need to find what y is. You don't need to do anything from there. It was just show this is true. Okay. And then on to higher plus. So again, remember higher, grade 7. Higher plus, we're talking grades 8 and 9s. So, starts off with some functions here. And it starts off with composite functions. So this is, I think the exam basically considers this grade 9. This is like one of the last sort of things you'd see. If you're doing composite functions, you start from the right-hand side. So that means we start with f. F of x is x plus 3. So we'd write in x plus 3. And then we want to do the next thing, which is g. So we want to do g to x plus 3. What does g mean? G says number goes in, number gets squared. So number goes in, x plus 3. Number gets squared, x plus 3 all squared. That's it. You could expand that if you wanted, but there's certainly no need to. So we put f, write down what it is, and then put it into g. Okay. Next question. Estimation of gradient at the curve at x equals 3. There it is. Now, first off, find the point. Remember what we said about gradient. You see it keeps coming up on this. That it's change in y over change in x. So, where is that? Now, we'd have to, and this is going to be incredibly difficult to do on a tablet, but you have to draw a line that is parallel to the curve at that point. So I'll have one more go actually, because I don't like that. So it should be something like that. Let's say that's the line I drew. I know it's not perfect, but you can draw a little bit better. That is going to be our gradient triangle. And then we just have to do change in y. So this goes from 22 at the top to 10 at the bottom. And it goes across from 2 to 4. So change in y was 12, change in x was 2, but also it's going downwards, so minus. 12 over 2 is 6, so gradient I would estimate to be minus 6 at that point. So we draw a gradient triangle which just touches the curve at the point mentioned in the question. Second one is we want to find an estimate of an area between the curve and the x-axis between 0 and 5. Now you quite often see this in distance time questions, where they want you to estimate a distance travelled underneath a speed graph by finding its area. What it wants us to do is to estimate the area here. Now if we're doing that, you basically want to split it up into some strips. It doesn't tell you how many to go with, so play it relatively straightforward. Just pick a couple. I'm going to draw a line there. I'm going to say I'm going to find the area of this trapezium here, and I'm going to find the area of this triangle here, and I'm going to add those two things together. So I have got two areas that I want to find. First one is a trapezium. Now trapezium, you might need to flip your head, but it's like the sum of the parallel sides. and the parallel sides are 21 and 25, halved, and then times by the height, and the height goes from 0 to 2, so times 2. That'll give me 46 as my estimate for the first area. The second one is a triangle, half times base times height. The base is 3, because that's the difference between 2 and 5 on the bottom. The height is 21, because that's how high up it goes here. And halve it, because it's half times base times height. That will give me 31.5. So my total estimate for the area will be to add those things together. I would estimate 77.5. There are a huge variety of answers that you could have there. It depends where you've drawn your shapes. It's more checking, have you found the area of the shapes you have drawn, rather than have you matched a specific answer. So I'd say anything in the region 70 to 80 is probably legit. Okay, last question is we have a histogram, and I know it's a histogram because I can see this word frequency density. And the key with histograms is that area is basically equal to frequency. So what we need to do before we answer any of this stuff is find the areas of each of these bars, and in doubt in a histogram question that's what you should do to start with. These are all rectangles, which means it's just base times height. The first one is 75 times 8, that's 600. The second one is 50 times 16, that's 800. Third one, 25 times 20, that's 500. Fourth one, 100 times 5, so another 500. So what we can tell from that is the total number of people, or sunflowers, or whatever it is measuring, sunflowers looks like, that this counts, and that is 2,400 flowers. Now if we want to find an estimate for the median, what does the median mean? The median means like halfway, or 50%, or something like that. There are 2,400 flowers, so if you divide that by 2, that tells us we want to find flower number 1,200. Where is that? Well, we know it's not in the first bar, because that's only 600 flowers so far that are between 0 and 75. So it's somewhere in the second bar, because the second bar would take us up to 1,400. So what we kind of want is to draw a line here, where we could split up this 800, that we know the whole thing adds up to, into 600 and 200. Okay? So we want to know, like, what is this value here? Now, how do those two relate to each other? 600 is like 3/4 of 800, so we'd want to go 3/4 along the way. This was from 75 to 125, and we want to go 3/4 of the way from there to there. It's a gap of 50, 3/4 of 50 is 37.5. Add it on to 75, and you'll get that the median is at 112.5 centimeters. Another way of doing that would be to draw a cumulative frequency graph of the whole thing and draw some lines on it. That seems a bit more effort than I'm willing to put in. Lastly, 2 sunflowers are selected at random. Probability that both sunflowers have a height greater than 2 meters. Okay, so you need to know how many sunflowers have a height greater than 2 meters to start with. And that goes right neatly in the middle of this bar we drew here. So we can split up that 500 into being that there's 250 on this side and 250 on this side. That means that there are 250 sunflowers bigger than 2 meters out of a total of 2,400 sunflowers. That's the probability we pick one. Now if we're being super pedantic, you could now say this would have to be times 249 out of 2,399 because you picked one of the flowers, but we will assume some replacement, and I'll just times it by 250 over 2,400 again. Angry comments, please follow. Definitely not something I can do in my head, so I'm just typing it in. So that would give you 25 over 2304, or, if you like decimals, 0.0109. There we go. So that was the first day. That was the Saturday. Hopefully that helped with whichever one you did. I'm going to try and keep this up over the 2 weeks, and yeah, best of luck. See ya.